starting with getting enough sleep and having the boundaries to like actually prioritize that for yourself. I know so many agency owners who are just out there burning the midnight oil on their passion. They're just like building websites until like 2-3 o'clock in the morning. And then they either need to like wake up and be a parent, or like wake up and be a spouse, or like whoever else they are in their life besides business owner that they're just like saturating all their time with. And that's like honestly really upsetting, because they're also likely leaving other things on the table, like again, personal relationships, like their personal health, their diet, and all of that stuff is just this negative compounding effect in the wrong direction. And again, it's personal operations here, right? You are your business to a certain extent, especially if you're a solo founder or you have a small team, like you very much still are your business. So if you're not prioritizing your rest and taking that break every single day, that's like pillar number one of the sabbatical method.
Alyson, thanks for joining me.
Greg, I'm pumped to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. So you are all things operations, and we talk a lot. And I will say that we have a lot of clients and even prospects in our world. And I know you serve agency owners as well. So everyone watching is going to really enjoy this conversation. But I mean, even just this morning, I had a conversation with a prospect who was like, Greg, in one of your videos, you make the comment of like, if you haven't been on a vacation in a while because like you're always working on a vacation, or like, when's the last time you had a vacation? Like that's brought up all the time. Like, oh my God, it's been like 12 years since I've had a vacation, or 7 years. And so you have this thing called the sabbatical method. You even have written a book about sabbaticals, which to my understanding, a sabbatical is a much longer vacation while you're still making money and still getting paid, and things apparently keep functioning. So for some viewers, this might seem like this unicorn that they can never catch. So you're going to teach us today how to be able to take a sabbatical from our business because our operations are smooth. Is that what we're able to do?
Heck yeah.
Are we going to be able to do this?
I think that even like more, I would say like bold promise that I can make here is like learn how to ROI on rest, right? Because I think a lot of us are in a position where we think that like hustling, grinding, moving things forward, like we get that gratification from seeing the bank account grow, or seeing the follower count grow, or seeing the email list grow. And really sometimes like it's a strategic trimming back that actually allows us the space for the next level of growth. And so the sabbatical method is the long-term vision of that, right? Like what does rest look like, perhaps like from my business that is able to function really well without me, but it's also at the molecular level a little bit in like the, how do I build rest into the way I operate like every single day? A lot of companies in early stages, they go into like build, launch, build, launch, build, launch, and they go back and forth between that. They see feast or famine months because of that. Lots of agency owners do. They see inconsistent results because of that, where they're just like reinventing the wheel all the time. But really in our business, like operationally, we need to be building, launching, then operationalizing, right? And that's where that like rest function comes in, where we can then tackle projects a little bit simpler, a little bit easier in the future.
So you run a company called Operations Agency, and we talk about systems and operations a lot on the show. And I think that's like the key to having a business that runs smoothly. I'm curious, like for someone that's listening, do you feel like agency owners, service providers specifically, they romanticize what operations or systems actually are, so much so that they don't actually know what it is? Like they're like, I need systems and operations, but like they can't define what that actually means. And if so, how do you define operations?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I think a lot of service providers, especially as they start businesses, their acumen is not in business ownership, right? It's in website building or like running paid traffic or something else, right? That's amazing. That gets people, great results, but then they end up running a business. So the fact of it is I think we tend to overcomplicate operations. And it's because a lot of traditional definitions that we get from operations, like Six Sigma, for example, is like one of the most traditional ways of operating. And they like wrote the book on corporate operations, but it's way too cumbersome and crazy for a small business. Like in no way, shape, or form should any of us be following like most of that advice. And even EOS, right? So then Traction comes out in 2016, 2015, and comes out and says, this is the entrepreneurial operating system. This is the way you're going to get a grip on your business and be able to do this. And even that is super cumbersome to implement. It takes like a year with an integrator, and there's like all of these different things that you have to implement. And really only a couple of tweaks actually are going to get you where you need to go. So I find that the sabbatical particularly, I really love this. It gives you that cadence of being able to get up above your business and say, what do I really want? Where is this thing really going? And we start to solve the problem of like the hit by a bus or win the lottery analogy, right? What happens when somebody goes out? And then we craft our operations based on that, right? We craft our operations based on what if this person leaves? The person who's doing all the developing, closing all the deals, doing all the customer support, managing all of the accounts, right? If that's the person, if we're a couple person agency, and the same can be true for our entire team, right? We start to build this habit around taking rest and creating healthy boundaries. All of a sudden, we're probably in better shape than we've ever been in. We probably have better personal relationships. That carries into our work, right? So to me, it's about operating as a full person if you're a founder, right? Versus just being this like really strict, red tape filled, like really process driven, really systems driven organization. Because the companies that are built to really support our lives are the ones that are going to last because we're never going to stop running them, number one. And number two, they're super attractive to sell because anybody who builds a lifestyle business also is looking over their shoulder and they're like, oh, I kind of want that thing. It seems really cool and profitable, so I'm probably going to take it. So really, a lot of us think that building for lifestyle and building for exit are two different things, but fundamentally they're not. You just want to be able to see that the founder isn't like critical to the operational functions of everything that's happening in the business.
I love it. And then, yeah, I mean, something that I've noticed, and I think this is, maybe you'll kind of take us there with kind of as you dive into the sabbatical method, but like I've always found that early days when I would go on a vacation, but I like still did work, I'd have a bunch of band-aids on things that were probably broken, but like you didn't actually realize they were broken because you were still just too available or too close. And even when you were supposed to be away. And then when I finally got to a stage where, I had enough things in place where I could not work, I could go on vacation, like leave my laptop at home and like not even check in, you would always come home to, oh, well, like these 5 things broke. So now we know what we need to go fix so that when we go away next time, it doesn't happen again. And it's like a learning curve of like being able to tolerate the fact that, yeah, I know, like, I go on vacation next week and I'm not going to be checking in. And I know something's going to go wrong. Like something's going to break. Nothing's going to be like business ending, but we'll come back and we'll have identified areas where like, hey, if you wanted to go away for 2-3 weeks, this thing has to be fixed. It points to where we need to focus. So I guess starting from there, like sabbatical, how long is a sabbatical? Where do we start on like planning for it? Like show us the way.
Oh, I love this. So my goal with the sabbatical method and just everything that I present on this topic is to kind of redefine the term sabbatical. So I'm going to give you kind of 2 quick stories. So when I signed my book in a public arena, I first of all had so many challenging thoughts on the way over. I was like, nobody's going to want my dang signature on this book. Like, this is just, why am I even doing this? And so I'm walking over and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, how are people going to react to this? Are they just going to be like, oh my gosh, Allie, you saved my life. Like, this is incredible. But I got 2 reactions from every single person that came to the table. Like, seriously, Greg, without fail. The first was, sabbatical must be nice. Like completely, immediately dismiss it, right? And the second one was, oh, I could really use that. And like, it just planted that like seed of possibility, right? Someone says, I'm so far in the weeds, I can't even imagine this for myself. And then another person is like, man, I've been burning the candle at both ends. So I think both people probably need it, but 2 very different reactions. And so I think when we think of sabbatical, we think of one of 2 things as well. We think of founder of Patagonia, who like took his infamous sabbatical and then like the company 10x or something, right? Huge impactful story. We think of Bill Gates, who does his his 2-week think weeks, and he takes his little sabbaticals every year. And we're like, these are for like billionaires or, multimillionaires, people with lots of resources, people with massive teams, right? I can't possibly do this. Or we think of tenure. We think sabbatical is given to us by this, prestigious university. Or, you always think of like research sabbatical, right? Or a professor goes out on a sabbatical to go and research their next book, right? So it's given to you, it's presented to you as an opportunity. I personally think that we can leverage the benefits of both, but redefine it in terms that small business ownership, just like operations, right, can actually leverage. And so sabbatical for me is more about a cadence of rest that you can build into some of those higher level rest periods that really disconnect you from the business and allow you to kind of see above the trees and see where this thing is going. So I start sabbatical, truthfully, with the cadence of the simplest rest that you can possibly imagine. So with your sleep. And I think like starting with getting enough sleep and having the boundaries to like actually prioritize that for yourself. I know so many agency owners who are just out there burning the midnight oil on their passion. They're just like building websites until like 2-3 o'clock in the morning. And then they either need to like wake up and be a parent or like wake up and be a spouse or like whoever else they are in their life besides business owner that they're just like saturating all their time with. And that's like honestly really really upsetting because they're also likely leaving other things on the table, like, again, personal relationships, like their personal health, their diet, and all of that stuff is just this negative compounding effect in the wrong direction. And again, it's personal operations here, right? You are your business to a certain extent, especially if you're a solo founder or you have a small team, like you very much still are your business. So if you're not prioritizing your rest and taking that break every single day, that's like pillar number one of the sabbatical method. And I always say, like, start where you are, right? So if you are in that place right now, if you're building websites until 2-3 o'clock in the morning every single night, and you think you're going to take a 3-month sabbatical, you're living a pipe dream. Like, totally that person who said must be nice, that's that person. And I don't recommend that you do it like that. It's kind of like deciding that you're going to run a marathon today and then going out tomorrow and running the marathon. It just like doesn't work like that, right? So you got to build up to it. So start with that small daily habit of, let's make sure I get some sleep. Let's make sure that my business can operate within the window of time that it needs to operate so that I can actually pour into me as a human being to come and run this thing.
I love that. And so you might be taking us there, but you use the example of a marathon. So I have to piggyback off that. So like, I remember in like 2019, I ran my first half marathon and I was like, I've never ran that far in my life. Like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And I signed up for like a 12-week program that I followed. And like, by the time, marathon came around, I was ready to go. And so like, when you use that analogy, my first kind of question was like, okay, so obviously the person who's working until midnight right now, like, isn't going to like take the sabbatical tomorrow. But like, what is like a realistic, like, if I were to throw a date out into the future for like, if I follow this plan, like likely how far out are you planning the sabbatical to prepare for said sabbatical?
Yeah, it depends on the length, honestly, Greg, but I find that we can get some really meaningful progress in 90 days. The book was written to kind of be like hard 75 and like a hard reset, right? So like a lot of us know that we're overdue. Like we know, like we know we're overdue for rest. We know that we've been burning the candle at both ends. So what I found was to be true that if it took you a little while to read this book and then you have some implementable daily habits that you can keep, then that will actually get you a little bit closer to being able to take a full length sabbatical over the next 90 days. So to me, it's all about the assessments and it's all about what you're willing to put into it, right? So if you're willing to listen to this awesome, this awesome video podcast from Greg and Alyson, and then tomorrow you're like, no, totally, I'm going to shut my computer at 5 o'clock. That way I can go be with my family, get a good night's rest, and then wake up in the morning and crush it and do the most important tasks. That's really great. And that's what I'm going to do. Then you're going to see far more success, way faster than somebody else who's like, oh, I don't know. I still have these things I need to do. I'm not really sure. And we all have stuff to do, but it's about like really committing to creating a business that doesn't need so much of you. Like I say this to my founders all the time at Operations Agency. Like a lot of us will say, oh, well, I work all the time on my business and I take a vacation and I'm uploading creative over crappy hotel Wi-Fi up into Facebook Ads Manager. And I'm like, don't do that. It takes you twice as long. It's actually like way unproductive. And the fact of it is like you can train somebody to do some of that stuff way faster than you, probably way better because they're in a better headspace. They're not like, dad, we want to go to the pool. Like it's just way different. So I always say that like figuring out like how you can train your business to operate with less of your time, like every day that you work 10-hour days, every week that you work 80-hour weeks, you are training your business to need that much of your time. Does that make sense? Like it's almost like you're feeding this animal. And like, I think it was Mike Michalowicz, Profit First. He says, fundamentally, we need to believe that like our business is a cash eating machine. Like that's true of the founder's time too. Like it's literally, we just get so sucked into the business and everything that it needs from us. And then we have to become all of these things, right? We have to become the chief marketer, the chief salesperson, the chief like everything. And it becomes really challenging for us to be able to actually do every single thing well. And so the sabbatical method is a hard reset and a forcing function, right? Going out of the business, even if it's just for those few hours between the hours of 5 and 2 in the morning, to ask yourself the question like you are, Greg, like what falls through the cracks, right? What are the things that are going to actually not get done? And then can I prioritize those to get done in a timely manner during actual working hours? And then start documenting that stuff, man. Like, honestly, I'm a big SOP gal. I mean, we all know this. I'm not a fan of over documenting, but I love operational transparency, like with my whole heart. I love the question, like answering the question, how do I do blank? I think it provides so much freedom for founders.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like I have a client, Steven, who does like what you say. It's like, he was working with clients all day and then he'll just check the help desk ticket system at like 8 o'clock at night. Like he'll reply and I'll do some stuff. I'm like, what if you just didn't?
Yeah.
Like what? Like none of those things were so urgent that if you answered them at 10 a.m. the next day, like nothing changed. Like, and the only thing that did change was like you could have been hanging out with your kids or sleeping and getting more rest, but now you just took care of this one email because it was there. And so I love the like that little action of just like, hey, like how do you take from 5 p.m. or whatever until the next morning off without working? So is that technically tied to the rest?
Oh, absolutely.
Principle?
Yeah, totally. So something I'll say really quickly to land all of this, because I think a lot of people probably listening need to hear it because I know I did. The reason why your client is jumping in and answering emails isn't because there's a fire, and it's not because it's a really important thing. It's because it feels really good to be needed, period. Like feels so good to be needed. And I think as founders, that's one of the number one challenges that we all go through. I was same thing with my kids the other day. Like my son, he was potty training, like needed me a lot. And then the other day he's like, Mom, I got this. Like I'm going to go do it on my own. He like almost closed the door in my face. I was like, dang, man, this kind of stings. And so it's so true that it does. It feels so good to be needed. And the reason why we do those self-sabotaging things in our business, like check our email right before we walk away from our desk, and then we carry all that baggage and the weight of the 200 in like support inbox, is because we don't want to disconnect from being needed in our business. We've built our self-worth around this thing. And so actually similar to being a parent, right? We're in the business of raising adults. That's what we're in, right? And so oftentimes I find that equating business ownership to growing a family is really, really worthwhile, because the baby in the early stages, it needs us, right? It needs us for almost every single thing. And it's really challenging. The nights are long. But if you want to professionalize your operations and your business, you need to ask yourself the question, how does this business become a capable adolescent? How is it tying its shoes and making itself some sandwiches and going and reading something in the corner when it needs to just be quiet for a second? And like, those are wins. They're massive wins. And like, if we're in a position where we're dropping our kid off at college and we still need to pull their pants up after they go to the potty, that's a problem. Like, that's a problem. And that doesn't reflect very well on us as parents at all. And we do this to our business every day. We just like coddle it and we coddle it and we coddle it because it feels really good to be needed. And we don't know where those lines are because our business changes every single year, right? Just like our kids, and we don't know what it needs. And so we have to adapt. So that's something I like to encourage a lot of folks who, you know, try to really weave this into how they operate, is like, ask yourself the question, like, what would it look like for my business to just be like 10% more self-sufficient, right? Not 100, just 10% more self-sufficient.
I love that 75 hard analogy of like these like are tactical things that you can do to start having business run more smoothly. So we start taking our initial sabbatical between, 5 and 9 a.m. or whatever time you get back to it. That obviously has dramatic benefits to it. So like once we do that, where do we go from there? Or was that the SOP thing, the how do I do this?
Yeah, so that was actually the next lead in. So, okay, to kind of frame this out. So we've got the first thing, which is to create boundaries in your day and make sure that you're prioritizing your own rest, your own sleep, right? And that means closing the computer at 5, taking a full weekend, dare I say, really doing some of those things, right? That like shrink the available plate of time, inside of your business to try to train it to run on that smaller time frame. So that's step number 1. Step number 2 is to consider that there can be working sabbaticals. And I am going to explain the kind of 3 levels of working sabbatical here, because there are a lot of people, again, who can't access a full, 3-month sabbatical. But what we can do is over a 90-day period, try to rise in the ladder of different types of working sabbaticals. So the first is the assister. In the book, I talk about like a super famous basketball player who like had the all-time assist record in the state, I think with the Celtics. I don't know why his name is not coming to top of mind right now, but stayed with the Celtics for like, I think it was like 10 or 12 years, which is like unheard of in basketball. Like they just always bounce around. So assisters help someone else tee up to score, right? That's what they do. That's like what they're amazing at. And they're critical in the team structure of a 5-man team, right? Which a lot of us are dealing with, right? Our small agencies, they're dealing with a 5-man. And what we need to do is make sure that somebody on the team is an assister. And if you can be that assister, that is the first level of working sabbatical, which means record your screen when you're doing stuff and say, this is how I would do it. And then give it to somebody else, right? On your team. Say, hey, listen, I need you to go score. I need you to go deliver this client email. I need you to go and build or wireframe wireframe this thing out and make sure that you have that in place. And now if you're pre-hire, doing this work is still really, really important because you can put it all in one place and then have somebody come in and just score right away, right? Like ROI positive, like week one on lots and lots of things that you can keep inside of your knowledge base. So that's number one. The second level is the coach, right? So that is the person who's on the sidelines who is like, hey, listen, guys, this is what I need y'all to accomplish, right? Here's the framework or the play that we are going to run or the thing that we're going to do, but I need you guys to go ahead and form the plan. So it's kind of like our mutual friend Dan says, like 10, 80, 10. And so you come in the first 10%, you cast your vision, and then the 80% is done by the team. And then you come in the last 10% to just be like, okay, yeah, this looks really good. I feel like this is sign off before I send it over to the client. It gives you a little bit of like a decreased anxiety on wondering like whether or not the thing was good. And then you can kind of have your touch on it. So that's the coach level. I often find that that comes mostly in meetings, right? So you've got internal knowledge. How do I do blank? People can find our things. Then usually I recommend having a standing weekly meeting with your team to say, hey, listen, guys, this is what's priority this week, right? And then that way they are super duper duper clear on all the things that need to happen and what their role is there. So that's the coach level. The third is the leadership sabbatical. So this one's my favorite one because a lot of people don't talk about this, but it's been kind of circled around, like Dan Sullivan says, zone of genius, like staying within the things that are only really bringing you a lot of fulfillment and the company a lot of growth, right? So this, for a lot of digital agency owners, this is founder-led sales, right? A lot of that is really, really challenging and definitely later stage to like train that out of the business. But staying like in the sales function entirely, that decreases the likelihood of those feast or famine months, right? Your team feels like they can completely own certain projects and you're just kind of like running on the growth side of the business. If you do, YouTube content or you're going out and delivering workshops, like you can kind of stay in that lane and really lead from a thought leadership. I know you talk a lot about intellectual property, Greg, like that type of, actual hard work that's going to actually grow the business and define the future iterations of the business, like getting up out of the weeds and thinking like, okay, what is my perfect person that I could serve? Like, what are they thinking? What are they feeling? And what do they need from me? Like, how can I serve them? And what can I deliver them that makes them feel really supported and really understood and all those things? And I think that's where we start to clear up some of that bandwidth, I guess, to like do some of the more growth development work on the business that like we just can't access when we're in the weeds, right? We just can't. We can't access that side of our brain. So those are the 3 levels of working sabbaticals. And my goal for anybody who's consuming any of my content, who's reading the book or anything, that they're really able to kind of escalate through that process where ideally our job in the business, like I always joke, like promote yourself to CEO, right? Like you're the founder, but like you're not the CEO of your business most likely. And it's really important that we can like promote ourselves into that role.
I love it. So we have the assister, we have the coach, and we have the leadership sabbatical. I love it. So sounds like I think you said this, that's typically the order that you go through, right? Like you actually do them in that order. That's the logical.
Most likely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So where do we go from there?
Yeah. I mean, ideally you're in a leadership sabbatical and you're like, cool, I just get to like create content all day. Then the question becomes, do you need a sabbatical? Right? Like the question becomes like, is life awesome? And now you're like, well, I don't want to take 6 months off from this thing because I'm just doing everything I love. So that's the big fork in the road, right? Is like, have I built a business now that I really enjoy? Or is there still something, right? Is there still something that I feel like I could be doing more of, or something that isn't quite super efficient with my business? And that's where we can start to detach ourselves a little bit more formally from the business. And so that could look like a 3-month sabbatical. Honestly, I use a really similar process when I plan with self-employed moms for maternity leave. We start to define like, what does business look like now? And this is where major shifts can occur, right? So you take some time off from the business. Let's just say you want to do 2 or 3 months, so a full quarter off. The big things that we need to be doing inside of that sabbatical, first and foremost, is not communicating with our clients or our team, right? In the traditional sense. So I always recommend that we have a BAT line, the one person who can get in touch with us. Usually it's an assistant, or a right hand operations person. That person is the only person who can contact you, and they know for what reasons. So there's a clear boundary there on like what you are and are not willing to handle on sabbatical, because just like your clients you were talking about earlier, Greg, like if we don't set that really clear boundary, we're going to jump back into company Slack. We're totally going to jump into the project management tool, those habits actually die super, super hard. And it's challenging. So setting up that boundary, one bat line, communication, out of projects, all the things. I always recommend if somebody is going to take some time off, and I did some sabbatical coaching through the process of writing the book and the early stages of that. And one of my co-coaches was saying that planning and telling everybody as early as possible about your sabbatical is important. Just like when a mom announces like, hey, I'm pregnant and I'm going to be off for a little while and our life is going to look totally different after this. We need to tell everybody and anybody, our clients included, and you'd be surprised actually. And I actually navigate this quite a bit with the maternity leave conversation because moms are like, if I tell all my clients that I'm pregnant, like I worked with an owner of a design agency and she was like, I was going out to pitch this massive project. She's like, I was 5 months pregnant. And she said, I wore the biggest shirt I could possibly find so that they couldn't tell because I thought I was going to lose the deal. And I was like, dang, that sucks. Like that super duper sucks. And it's because it was her and like 2 other teammates. She was selling her as much as she was selling her design work, right? So that's true of us. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're so scared to tell our clients like, oh, I'm going on a 2-week vacation is because they're over there, or maybe you in your brain are thinking like, well, they bought me, they bought my work, they bought my time. And ultimately, until we make that untrue, until they're buying a system, until they're buying your business and everything that comes along with it, then it's going to be super tethered to your time. So I find that even telling your clients or the forcing function of telling your clients that you're going out on sabbatical is actually really helpful because then it starts to force you to define what would need to be true. So then you tell your clients, hey, listen, I'm going out on sabbatical. It's going to happen from this date to this date. And this person is going to be super responsive and direct point of contact to, lead your marketing or build your web pages or whatever it is service that you're offering. And I'm going to personally train with him one-on-one for the next 6 months on this so that he can be ready or she can be ready to take over your project. Right. And so like, it's that level of clarity and certainty that will transfer over to your clients and allow them to actually demonstrate compassion. I have actually never had an announcement for a sabbatical or a maternity leave be like, all right, I lost all my clients today. See you later. People are people and they understand. They're like, hey, congrats. That's so exciting. What are you going to do? So anyway, I think we get kind of caught up in that. So make sure that you plan it, make sure that you set that boundary and you tell everybody possible as early as possible what's going to happen so that you guys can all kind of devise a plan. And then the final stage of preparing for a sabbatical is practice. I know that sounds crazy, but I love me some good basketball analogies. And practice is so key. I was talking to a mom literally earlier today. She runs a really successful membership retention company, and she helps memberships like retain their people. And she was telling me, she was like, when I went out on maternity leave with her third daughter, she's 6 now. She was like, I didn't even know how to rest. She's like, I had no idea how to rest. She's like, I didn't even know what to do with myself. She was like, I was depressed and I couldn't believe that she's like, I felt like my life was amounting to nothing. And I was like, man, that's crazy because all of us need rest. Rest, we all can fundamentally believe on paper, it's a great thing. But sometimes in practice for high performing founders is it's just unfathomable to just not do anything for a little while, read books and think your thoughts and meditate and do whatever. So practicing that is so key because then you actually can't soak up the benefits of taking a 3-month-long sabbatical if you aren't ready for that. It's like going into a 12-minute downward facing dog and you've never done one before. You're like, what? You're gonna make me do this for 12 minutes? It's crazy. So you want to make sure that you're practicing. So what that might look like is cutting out on Fridays, right? Being like, hey, listen, I'm going to work 4-day work week. I'm not going to work on Fridays, but not only am I not going to work on Fridays, I'm going to take half a day and just be, right? Be with either my physical activities. I know you like to mountain bike, go out and do some of that stuff, right? Do the things that are filling up your cup who you are outside of work. And I think that when we start to do those things, that's where the ideas really start to thrive because there are so many really compelling bits of research on cortisol levels and their impact on your idea flow. And if we're super stressed out and we haven't slept in a while and we feel like we're stuck in the weeds of our business, there's no shot we're going to be able to see the next big step for us. We need to go and do the things that are really de-stressing us, be with our family, family, go do the activities that we love, read books that we really enjoy and like things that we really want to learn about, but just felt like we haven't had the time. So practice and make sure that you can actually soak in the benefits of being off.
So I can like hear, you can't hear the commenters, but I can imagine people that would comment if they were to talk and be like, that sounds like, it sounds too simple, right? Like I've done a lot of these little steps, right? And like, I obviously know the benefit of them. And like, just the whole concept that you're kind of presenting to us of like having the evenings, having then the Fridays, like the looking through those different lenses of assist to coach to leader to like building up and training someone to then take this, extended period of time off and how to like work towards even practicing it along the way. Like, I don't know. I just feel like I could hear the agency owner who's like burnt out, who's just like almost won't even accept that as like, that's actually the way. Do you get that?
That's fine. I can't help that person until they want to help themselves. I mean, honestly, it might sound curt and maybe a little bit brash, but ultimately, if we want something to change, we have to change something. So it's really challenging, I think, sometimes to talk with people about this. And I ask them, I'm like, well, why are we just unwilling to try? Honestly, I used to be super like before so the reason why this came out, so for two reasons, I was approached in 2021 by an executive coach for GoDaddy and Airtable. And they came up through the agency world and through the tech space. And they were coaching these like high level executives at these companies. And she came to me and she said, Allie, I've ignored my personal health. I have advanced lipidemia and I have to get my lymphatic system drained every 4 hours. And if I don't, my doctor said that I could die. And she's like, I got to take a sabbatical. And she's like, and I don't know what I'm going to do. It was her husband, and a handful of contractors and a really small team. And her main business was her. She was coaching and she was going and delivering these conferences and delivering these trainings. And she had no idea what she was going to do. So what we did was we put some systems in place for her to be able to keep things running behind the scenes while she was able to prepare for this. And then we asked ourselves the question, could this individual certify? Could she train other people to do what she was doing on her behalf? So what we did was we professionalized, because she kind of had it, but it wasn't optimized. And we professionalized her training and we recorded all of it audio because she was laying down, getting her lymphatic system drained. I mean, name needs to be, I almost did it. Name needs to be protected. If Miranda can do it, y'all can do it, because literally like facing one of the biggest health challenges she's ever had, like she could barely stand up and walk. It was so advanced. She was like using a wheelchair inside of her home. And we created this training, what she now calls her certification program and her community of certified coaches, her collective. And she has a way more leveraged business and she enjoys it way more because now she can give the support that she wasn't able to give to some of those teams because they'd ask for more of her time and she just didn't have it. Now she has a full collective of people that she can deploy that are certified under her methodology in a multitude of different ways. And so there are possibilities on the other side of this. It's almost also like, to bring this back, like real time. I'm a huge houseplant gal. Like, come to my home and there's like 50 houseplants. I love them. I want to grow them from seed and like sell them in our garage. You have to do aggressive trimming sometimes on houseplants in order for them to have the ability to grow into the next version of them. Like, I aggressively trimmed one of our plants last summer and now it is 3 separate plants. So imagine that as a business, right? You aggressively trim something back and then it 3Xs in a year. Like, that's worth it, right? Even if it's a little bit painful in the beginning, and even if it feels completely opposite to what you think might look best, right? Because what we're looking at now is a plant that was half the size that it was, but then it becomes 3 times what it originally was. So I think a lot of us are afraid of taking that initial really hard step of just pruning back.
It reminds me of Todd Herman, who wrote Alter Ego Effect, who's like high performance coach, has coached like Kobe Bryant and a bunch of other famous athletes. He says that the language of high performance is subtraction. And kind of like, I just envisioned that as when him saying that, I like envision you like cutting and trimming this plant. Like, you're like actually cutting stuff out. You're taking parts of it away, eliminating pieces of it, and then it 3Xs, right? Whether that's just the focus, obviously just cutting out the stuff that's not helpful and not, fostering more growth. So many transferable elements of that analogy to business for sure. So like at this stage, we've been practicing and now we've had the sabbatical, right? Like, and to your point, like if we're able to do that, the business has just given us the lifestyle. And also if we're able to step away from a business for a significant amount of time and nothing, I don't say nothing goes wrong because things go wrong all the time, but like the business can function without you. It can get clients get results. Like it actually is a sellable asset. Back to they kind of are the same thing. Like people are like, oh, I have to like design this business for lifestyle or design it for sale. It's like, well, they're kind of the same. I love that. What did we miss?
That's when you call your local broker. I don't know, call your broker, sell that beast. Unless you want to run it, like that's great. Do that too. I don't know. It's interesting because like a lot of folks are like, okay, well now what? I'm like, that's up to you, right? Like what you've soaked in on your sabbatical is like, okay, I'm either going to do this, I'm going to run this because now I have a better relationship with my business. Like I always joke too with my team internally. I'm like, guys, we're not just helping people with their operations. We're helping them fall back in love with their business or like fall back in love with their job. And like it goes to the teams too, right? Like it would come into the situation and someone will call us up and be like, man, everything's a hectic mess and nobody on my team knows what they're doing and this, that, and the other. And the relationships are stressed and nobody wants to work there and the turnover is super high. And then all of a sudden you've got like this calm, peaceful, really easy to operate thing that everybody really likes. And it feels good and light, but not easy, right? It's still challenging to run a business. It's not ever going to be easy. But yeah, then all of a sudden, right? You're like, oh, this isn't so bad. Maybe this thing has legs, right? So I almost feel like it's kind of, yeah, just re-gifting that relationship back with your business where it might have been a little bit strained, a little bit challenging. And I think too, it can really help refine like what the business is.
I love it. Anything else that we feel like these people need to know?
Man, I feel like I'm my heart rate's a little high, my palms are a little sweaty, so I feel like I've given it my all here. No, I'll say this, I guess, in terms of a parting thing, is that, you know, it's so easy to just keep doing things the way that they're doing right now. And it's hard to do something else. I'm not going to say that it's going to be easy. I'm here talking about this and I've done this with my business through my maternity leaves and I've like really struggled through both. And so it's not easy. However, it's super worth it because the business I have now versus the business I had 3 years ago when my son was first born are night and day different. I still have problems, but they're problems I want to solve. They're problems I would love to tackle at this level. And so I think it's not going to come without challenges. And of course, taking time off is going to be something that you're going to need to work toward, but it's more than worth it. And not if only for you, but for your family, for your team, for your clients, right? You want to be showing up as the best version of you with the best possible vehicle that you possibly can to get them results. And so that's kind of the, I guess, big call to action is like, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be hard, but you can start simple and it doesn't need to be really overwhelming.
I love that. Yeah. And you definitely demonstrated how it can be started super simple. So, and then obviously, like you said, nothing worth doing is actually going to be easy. But obviously, like at the end of the day, you're going to have this business that can run without you and you get to focus all of your time, energy, and effort on the things that matter most. So Alyson, thank you so much. Where can people find out more about you and obviously get the book?
The book's on Amazon, The Sabbatical Method. You can search that up. It's awesome. It's probably my favorite thing to date, by the way. And I was actually just sharing this earlier that the process of writing a book is like the coolest thing ever. I personally miss it. I felt like I just got so much clearer on my process and like my why even. So if like you're thinking like, what should I do on my sabbatical? Like tee up some of those projects that you've been like wanting to ship for like a really long time. So the book is awesome. It's again on Amazon, The Sabbatical Method. I hang out on Instagram quite a bit at Operations Agency. If you want to find out if your business can function without you, DM me quiz and I'm going to send you a little quizzy quiz. It's super telling, I think, and it'll rate you on how like functional your business will be if you decided to step away. Most people like fail miserably, like go to the ER now, like fail so bad. And it's really telling, right? Because I think a lot of us think that our business will like stand up like at least a little bit, right? If we're out, but then we start to consider like, oh wait, no, they don't have everything they need to do this other thing. So it starts to kind of put that wheel in motion around like what you need to actually start to do.
I love it. And we'll link up to all of that stuff in the description below. Go check her out. She drops tons of tips all the time on Instagram. So definitely follow her there. Take the quiz, prepare yourself for a little bit of pain. But that initial pain is going to give you the areas that you now need to start focusing on. So Alyson, thanks again for joining us. We're going to have you back to talk more about the other operational stuff that you guys focus on once everyone gets their sabbatical.
Yeah, go take a nap, everybody. And then we'll see you guys next time on Operations with Allie and Greg.